Hi, I'm Michael Hartman.
I'm Naomi Liu.
And I'm Mike Rizzo. And this is OpsCast,
a podcast for marketing ops pros
and RevOps pros.
Created by the Mo Pros, the #1 community for marketing operations professionals.
Tune in to each episode as we chat with real professionals to help elevate you in your marketing operations career.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast, brought to you by marketingops.com, powered by Mo Pros. I am your host, Michael Hartman, joined today by both of my co-hosts, Naomi Liu and Mike Rizzo.
Naomi in the house.
Woo-hoo! Hi, guys.
She's
Been
here.
a little while.
It has been a while. We're glad to have you back. This is exciting times. So
Yeah, definitely.
we need to do one of our like Three Amigos episodes so we can kind of share what's going on. We've all had stuff going on in life, so we'll get to that another time. But this will be a fun one because I think I want to get into this one. I'm actually really this is an area that I've been really curious about. So, and what that is for our topic today is we're going to talk about. It's going to really be our first time in this, at least in this format, talking about the intersection of generative AI and marketing operations. So joining us to really help us with this conversation and for us to learn is Paul Wilson, who's Chief Strategist of GTM Systems, a consulting company focused on reinventing the intersection of marketing, sales, and customer success operations. So prior to starting GTM Systems, Paul had several senior leadership roles in marketing operations and marketing technology, including at OneTrust, Salesforce, Slack. I realized in my notes, I forgot he was at Marketo for a while. So he's got deep roots in all of this. He's also been involved in some cases with sales operations. And if I understood it right, Paul, you can clarify this. I think you were actually in sales for a while. And he's also an advisor to some startups, and just sort of an all-around person who helps the community. So Paul, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Great to be here. I'm very excited to chat on this topic. And yeah, there have been moments where I've been in sales. I've touched on multiple disciplines. I think the core of my journey really started as, at the dawn of what was then called inside sales in the early phases. I remember doing my first implementation of this new software as a service tool called Salesforce in 2001. Right. And then I started tinkering with CRM and CRM configs, did a lot of CRM work, and then got into marketing technology. So I don't want to talk about the decades, but it's decades that
I'll age myself a little bit. I remember doing work with Siebel Systems, right?
Oh yeah, Scopus. So we had a Scopus.
Yeah, I did Scopus too.
Scopus was bought by Siebel. Oh yeah,
I worked at a consulting company. That's what we did. So yeah, we all knew about the Tom Siebel, departure from, was it Oracle, right? And so it was a pretty interesting time. But yeah, I tell people, I was in marketing operations before it was called marketing operations, right? I had titles like e-marketing and internet marketing and whatever.
Yeah, when the internet was in black and white.
Yeah.
That's a good call.
Yeah, it's fun.
For better or worse, I know maybe, 40% of what you're talking about.
Right. Well, this was back in the really interesting times where data enrichment was going on to Hoovers and looking up companies and trying to find people's names.
Definitely.
I have to say there was definitely a task thrown my way one time where it was all right, how do we leverage Hoovers to be able to do something?
Yep.
I was like, wow, this is crazy.
So Michael and I have seen things arrive like LinkedIn.
At one point, gosh, this was probably 10, 15 years ago, but I remember someone pointed out that if you looked at your LinkedIn profile URL, you could actually tell what if you were the whatever number,
the OGs.
And I actually had a number, and I was like, I think I was in the first million or something like that. It wasn't that like hundreds, but it was at the time. I was like, wow.
And here we all are now talking about what our number is on Threads. I mean, it's all still happening.
Right. Okay. Well, so we could go reminisce for a while, Paul. Maybe you and I need to just do
a different podcast,
virtual happy hour or something, and just talk about life before the internet. But let's get started. So as much as I'm interested in the generative AI topic and learning, like there's a part of me is like, is it just hype? Is it reality? You know, what was it? Is there something that's down the road? It's probably a little bit of both, I'm guessing, or somewhere in between. But I'm like more interested in learning a little bit about, because I think your GTM systems, kind of thing right now is a relatively new adventure for you. I'm just curious about what led you to start that. What was the, was there timing was just right, or something you've been thinking about? What's the background?
It's something that's great. It's something that I've been thinking about for a while, and the time was right in terms of the bigger topic we'll get to in terms of generative. But to me, the timing is right for companies to be more mindful about the end-to-end digital experience. And regardless of whether or not there's a significant technology shift around the corner, which I believe there is, I see an opportunity in the market for there to be an end-to-end consulting practice around aligning data, technology, and processes across the disciplines we are currently seeing as marketing ops, sales or rev ops, and customer success. And I really think that the change that's coming around the corner is going to really accelerate and drive requirements across all of those silos today. And what GTM Systems is focusing on is, how do companies start to address the siloed nature of those operations functions, and what do they need to do and what can they do to really establish a cohesive brand experience for all of that digital work. And it's that transformative work that in the first phase of generative technologies coming into the market, it's that foundational work that I think is key. And so GTM Systems is going to be a consulting practice focused around what are the foundations that are needed in order to enable that kind of transformation across those core disciplines of sales, marketing, and customer success.
Got it. Okay. So good. It's like a good overlap here for what we're going to talk about. So in kind of our quick preparations for the conversation about the generative technologies, I'm going to you use that terminology instead of AI, which is interesting to me. I picked up on that. So I'm curious, maybe along the way, you'll describe what that difference is. But you mentioned that marketing technology, marketing ops folks were kind of pioneers. So kind of connecting the dots from our initial part of the conversation here on digital experience, websites, email marketing, automation, SEO, search and all that kind of stuff, data. I guess lately, like ABM things. Like, but when you say that, what do you mean? Can you elaborate on what you mean by like they were? I mean, I appreciate it. Like, I feel like, yeah, pioneers. But what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So again, perhaps it's the perspective of age, but I have seen the transformations that have occurred from if we put the line in the sand of 2000 to today. I really kind of see there have been a significant number of innovations that marketing has driven that really are those digital experience foundations. And I kind of look at those foundations of, the emergence of that digital B2B marketing notions, the notions of microsites on web pages, the ideas of email marketing.
I haven't heard microsites in a while.
So that idea of tying email marketing to landing pages and what happens when you can gather information that way, and how does that data then get transferred into the CRM? So rather than the CRM just being, an address book and a deal book, there's the idea that there was live data that was going to be accessible and available. So that dawn of digital B2B marketing moved then pretty quickly into social media and advancements inside the CRM related to those more catered experiences that marketing develops and then passes to sales. And it's that curation of digital experience from the site through social media through to the sales organization. And then we really started transforming infrastructures. We got the ability to have deeper analytics, deeper insights. The idea that mobile was coming to bear in the 2010 to 2014 range, all the transformations related to mobile, and then the notions of content marketing and dynamic content, personalization at scale in the 2012, 13 range to 2000, well, till today. But all of these changes are aligning and changing the digital experience, and marketing technology and marketing operations have curated and delivered those transformative platforms that are actually well beyond marketing. The website doesn't stop when you get transferred to sales. The benefits of analytics and data have become critical for customer success, just as critical in customer success as they were in marketing. I remember in probably about 2013, 2014, establishing a scoring algorithm on behaviors on the knowledge center of a client's website so that their support organization could have a engagement, what we would call an engagement score or a knowledge score for someone opening a support ticket, so that if you open a support ticket and you've consumed almost no content off the knowledge base, the support person you're dealing with will start with the "did you unplug it and plug it back in" questions. But if you have a very high knowledge score and you've been digging deep into white papers and case studies about custom integrations and custom implementations, and you open a support case, you're going to, in this example, you would already be on the second tier of support. And so that's a marketing operations function that left marketing operations and moved into the rest of the business. And so from my perspective, this is where those ideas of marketing ops, rev ops, customer success ops become a platform of go-to-market operations.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I think for
machine learning is going to level that very quickly, because it will curate the entire end-to-end experience. Not necessarily in 2023. It might be in 2025, 26, 27, that is the reality that we are living in. But the foundations today need to be built that lay the groundwork for those systems to really take advantage of the data that's available.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking like probably the I don't know if tipping point is the right term, but the tipping point for me in terms of seeing the potential of technology and applying it to marketing was when really Google search came around first, right? And the ability to really target an experiment and try things and quickly get data to inform decisions like that was working. Don't do that. We're going to switch this, right? Mm-hmm. We don't know which term's going to work. We're going to experiment or which phrasing on an ad. And then it quickly became data. I think data has been a huge one. People who are longtime listeners will know, like, I still think we have a problem with, we generate lots of data, don't get a lot of value out of it for most people. Right. So I think that's a challenge. Curious, like Mike and Naomi, if you was there anything like that for you where you're like, oh yeah, this is a game changer in terms of what can be done?
Hey everyone, Mike Rizzo here, CEO of MarketingOps.com and co-host of OpsCast. I've got a little secret to share with you, something that's been one of the best kept perks of our community until now. At MarketingOps.com, we've built a hiring program that's changing the game for marketing operations recruitment, and we're finally sharing it with the world. Our community is over 22,000 strong, and within that, we have over 4,400 members who are actively and passively seeking new opportunities. These are seasoned professionals with skills and experience spanning platforms like HubSpot, Pardot, Marketo, and so much more. Plus, we can help you fine-tune your outreach, targeting exactly the right candidates by region, years of experience, seniority level, or even agency experience. But here's the real cherry on top. When you hire through our program, your new team member gets a free membership or a virtual ticket to our annual conference. From day one, they're not just stepping into a new role, they're getting access to the training, networking, and support they need to hit the ground running. So if you're ready to unlock this incredible opportunity, it's time to let this secret out. Visit marketingops.com and find your next star teammate today. Thanks for listening, and as always, keep optimizing.
Yeah, I mean, Paul and I have talked about this a little bit, just on the side, a couple sidebar conversations, and certainly with a few other folks in the community recently. Like, I think Peter, or yeah, it was another community member I was speaking with recently, but we were talking about just, you know, how much impact will this sort of new era of technology really have on this particular role, right? Like we've seen it immediately take shape against creative, specifically like design and content copywriting. We've seen some of it start to impact even development level stuff, right? So GPT and whatever tools to help you write code. And when I was asked, do I think that this is coming after our jobs in sort of the marketing ops function, my immediate response was like, no. And I still hold on to that today. I really don't think it's going to be able to completely replace people, because when you think about people, process, and technology, and the unique nature that is every single business's genetic makeup, so to speak, the nuance of I use this field to make a key decision in my business, or these 5 data points to make key decisions in my business, is unique to every organization. And there isn't going to just be this blank, just like every business is different from the next, there isn't a blanket statement that a system could necessarily say, well, now you're building a go-to-market services business, and so Paul, this is your model for how to go get sales. Right? Like it's just not going to quite do that, right? And it's like, oh, well, you're using HubSpot and you're using Salesforce and you're using whatever else. Like, well, this is how you could do that to help, you know, hire these staff, to then integrate these tools, to then go to market and sell the products. Like, there's conversation that has to happen between people and how you want to sell, and the motions and the stages you want to go through. And there might be the fallacy of best practices that we all go up against, but I just don't see a system, an intelligence of any kind necessarily being able to completely replace the need for that discovery. You might actually be able to talk to it, and it could do discovery with you if it's trained to ask the right questions. But I don't know that part's ever going to go away. To try to end this, because I want to hear what other people have to say too. To end this, what I did realize though is, if you just like if you know how to use GPT today and you know how to sort of ask it the right questions and tailor it a little bit, you get some really good output from it. If you know the right questions to ask of a wholly integrated system, and I happen to use the HubSpot tech stack. So when it's built on an infrastructure that is one code base and it's a shared and unified sort of structure, with HubSpot releasing some of their own AI and ML stuff, there's going to be a point in time where I can go to their tool and say, obviously I don't work there, I have no idea, but I assume there's going to be a point in time where I can ask the AI, I want to launch a 5-touch nurture sequence to this persona. Can you help me build that workflow? And it would be like, blah, 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 and it would spit it all out, establish the enrollment criteria, put in the placeholders for the emails, and then it's going to ask me, would you like me to write the first draft of each of the 5 emails? And I'll say, yes, please do that. And it'll go.
And then you'll swipe right or swipe left on which option of the email you like, and then establish what the 5 final pieces are. So you're a curator, not an author.
Right. And so that part is going to happen, right? But you have to know, it's not going to come to you and be like, hey, I think you should launch a 5-touch nurture sequence for this audience. Like, it's not just going to start prompting you that right out of the gate. You should, it might eventually start making suggestions, but the point is it has to know what your end goals are, and you have to know what to ask it. And it can start doing a lot of that legwork for you that is manual effort. Otherwise is manual effort, right? Oh, now I got to go build a whole workflow and build these 5 emails and connect them all together and set the enrollment triggers. Like, that's all going to change. And that is coming after our jobs. But
that's also assuming, and just piggybacking off of what you're saying, Mike, is that, what you just described is very contained in the HubSpot silo, for example, right? That's assuming that you're not also integrating things like SurveyMonkey and Vidyard and ZoomInfo or all of the other stuff where, you're the artificial intelligence doesn't know that, okay, you also want to do lead scoring based on an email click within a video that they watched and add it to their score in HubSpot or something like that, right? You're still inputting that stuff in and you have to do QA and whatnot. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, there's always been in the history of just advancement in technology, things that have been invented that people are like, oh, what does this mean? Like when the calculator was invented, right? Computers, streaming services, all of that stuff. It's just the way that people interact and work just shifts.
Yeah, and I think that the impacts of technology on these roles and the work that we do is it's next to impossible to predict. And this is where, when I grew up, I remember I hated math class. Like it was just, I sucked at it. It wasn't what I liked. And I remember, my mom telling me, well, it's not like you're going to carry a calculator around with you all the time. Well, Mom, we do now. So, it's not only is it the calculator.
Not only is it a calculator, it's also a phone. Right. And I very distinctly remember the very first time I saw a mobile phone. Yeah. I was back in Phoenix. I was working in a summer between college, my first and second year in college, and I was a runner for a law firm, which meant I was had to go. I was the one that they sent out in the heat to go deliver documents to the courts or other law firms. Mm-hmm. And I was at one law firm in the lobby, and I hear this loud voice coming from behind the receptionist desk. And this guy comes walking out, and he's carrying, it's like that military, he's got the case in one hand, the connected phone, headset in the other, and he's basically yelling at whoever was calling him because it was so expensive. Right.
Yeah. Right.
I also had long distance cards back then.
Right. So I have a question. So one of the areas, and I think, Mike, your discussion around what's going to change and what's threatening our jobs prompted this from me. I look back at the accidental changes, not accidental, but the knock-on changes that happened because of major technology shift. And one of the ones that comes to me as an example related to Benioff and the notion of software as a service. I can recall, because prior to this gig, I was a print broker, like physical printing broker. And I produced documents, books, packaging, and CDs for other software companies. And when they had releases, they would produce just skids and skids of boxes of manuals and discs and packaging and ship stuff out all over the world. Software as a service ended all of that. And my hypothesis, and I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this, is today we see data providers, enrichment providers. We see all of these people trying to help with data. And it's my hypothesis that sector of our economy is going to be massively transformed when you see technologies like the OpenAI platform that are contextually aware of the outside world start selling silos where a company can pump their internal data sets in a protected funnel into the OpenAI framework and have curated live to the internet, plus all of my internal knowledge base data, CRM data, marketing history data. So when, Naomi fills out a form on my website, the engine is contextually aware of not only her, but every support ticket that's ever been opened by her company, every opportunity that's open and closed from her company, and the news that it's just announced that her company is acquiring their biggest competitor. Like all of that contextual framework will be there and immediately available. And I think that where we see all of the land grabs right now from 6sense, ZoomInfo, like all of the players in the data space, I think that's going to be where we see a massive change fairly quickly because of machine learning. But I'd love to get other people's riffs on that.
I totally agree. I was talking to the CEO of I can't remember the name of this organization at the moment, but which is terrible. But he showed me some of the capabilities of this platform, and in the context of my looking at your profile, Paul, on LinkedIn, I can initiate a conversation with you, and in about 30 seconds, it generates a post that is contextually relevant to not just your content that you've been sharing, liking, and interacting with on LinkedIn, but also if you're tagged to a company and the company's news or your blog and your content that you've published externally. And it's creating this highly personalized outreach that is totally based on you and your interactions and how I may want to present myself. It's happening today. Like,
yeah,
it's already happening. You start filling it with your own proprietary, CRM data in a protected silo and have it do that. Holy cat. Like, I don't know. What it made me think though was that at some point I'm just going to assume that every person who's ever reached out to me just has that tool now, right? Like,
right.
They're not
It changes
actually
the paradigm.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
I tell my kids, just assume you're being filmed wherever you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
So maybe I don't know about skeptic is the right word, but I'll try to play a little bit of like, okay, what if here, and that is so. What I have heard, and it's very minimal because I haven't had time to really dig into what's going on. Is that one of the things I've heard is that is a challenge for generative AI is how much data and input it has access to actually is beneficial, right? But it takes time for it to learn it. That if you just want to use your own company's data, the likelihood that it will be as effective is a little bit lower, right? So it sounds like what you're describing is a little bit of like some access to public data, and then some access to your
right.
specific data, but in a protected way, and it can feed into that. My head immediately goes to like, well, how can we trust that those are actually siloed bits of data, right? Because there's now, especially with all the concerns with privacy, but like I sense that like that could become I think there's the challenges I'm hearing, like that kind of problem with privacy and access to data, and could it be compromised is one. The other that I've heard about, and I think this is more from a content standpoint, both content and creative, is like rights or IP rights, copyright, that kind of stuff. How does that fit into all this?
There's a huge, and this is part of kind of the landscape that I'm working in today. As companies are looking at the topic of leveraging generative AI or machine learning, however, and we'll get to that topic too. But as companies are leveraging technology in new ways, not only is it what is the technology capable of, not only is it what is the data that we're providing to this technology to educate and curate the stories this technology can tell, where are the rights management factors? What are the foundations that companies need to begin building today around capabilities, not only so that they're respectful, but what are the legislative requirements that are being drafted and developed today? In Europe, there are a number of countries who are drafting legislation for consideration at the EU that will mandate the same sort of cookie consent for any use of PII and behavior in machine learning. And so companies are going to need to have the infrastructure and capabilities to opt users' data in or out offer them the experience like a choose your own adventure website where do you want this site curated with machine learning data, yes or no? Like all of the infrastructure, all of the notions of privacy and consent preference, the right to be forgotten, the implications across a brand. If a brand says, our data cannot be used in your curation of any of our customer employees' experiences. Like there is going to be a lot on the journey, not only about isn't this technology cool and do we have the data to feed the technology? It's what's the right way for us to deploy this? How do we need to think about it? Like there's positive experience, there's positive ideas that are rampant right now about, personalization at scale, being able to really provide you with your tailored experience of our brand, optimizing recommendations and things from, other B2B customers who have this product are also very pleased that they bought that product. Like that notion and the ideas of personalization interaction at scale. But then closely following that are the potential negative implications of over personalizations where people feel like it's a scene from Minority Report and they're, you're anticipating my next need before I even know it, and you've got it wrong. And then the idea is, I think, as you were sort of alluding to, Michael, of the bias. If a company improperly implements a machine learning algorithm to curate the content that's being delivered, and it's aggressively biased based on the customers the company wants, you might end up pushing away more customers than you should because you're biased to a company that isn't like them or whatever the case may be. And then, of course, there's the potential really negative bias, the potential of human bias, racial bias, and issues that you might not even be aware are occurring in the back end of algorithms leading into the content, and you're not aware of it until it's too late, and most of your infrastructure has been degraded because the data that the system has been building for the last however many microcycles it takes is now all off. And how do you roll it back? How do you retrain a large language model when a large language model has wandered too far in one direction or another? So all of these kinds of foundational topics are the topics on the journey. And I come back to my original thinking that it's marketing operations and technology professionals today who have as the top of their point of view that they're there to curate the brand experience and the digital experience.
Right.
And as all of these technologies roll out across other parts of the business, it's in our purview to be the subject matter guides and people navigating through with the other parts of the operations business in a go-to-market model where we're the curators of that digital experience, not just marketing technology, it's digital experience.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it. I mean, there's so many new things to kind of solve for here. Yeah, let's do like what what do you think puts marketing ops, revenue ops type people in sort of a unique position to be able to be I guess, a guide for their organizations or their customers, like in your case, their clients?
My thinking is that it's the revenue ops and marketing ops professionals of today who truly understand the journey of the data sets that exist today. So when I've gone to do discovery meetings and had conversations with organizations from mid-market through to large enterprise, to a T, the data science team understands the data from a logistical perspective. They know what data sets reside where and what are the pipelines and the logic of the pipelines from A to B. It's the rev ops and marketing ops teams who, when they enter the room, say, the data over there is crap. That we had so many problems with the way that lead lifecycle was managed back then. Like that, don't trust that. And it's that contextual knowledge that resides in our teams of the data sets and the technology stack that means as companies are looking to turn the corner and leverage new systems and new technologies, we're the ones who can really properly explain the data, explain what is good and what is not, and help curate the inputs to that large language model as it's learning what to do with what's in front of it. And I think that helping transform the infrastructure so that our clients in sales and marketing continue to get the output they're looking for and improvements they're hoping to gain through technology, we're the ones who really understand those needs and can help drive that change.
No, yeah. Okay. So that it's like, for our listeners, like I was sort of smiling when you described that scenario of, because I'm actually like, that's a scenario that I have seen myself play out too, where, like, and this is part of when I've struggled hiring like marketing analytics type people, is I get a lot of candidates who are data scientists and their domain tends to be either finance or science or something like that, where it's usually highly structured, whereas marketing data is typically a mess, right? To some degree or another, or and I don't necessarily mean that it gets crap, because I think that's a cop out for a lot of people to say we can't do any analysis because our data's bad. It's like, so what? Go figure it out anyway. But there is, like, it's messiness. Like I started
it's everywhere.
Marketing. Yeah. Like building out a householding model for consumer data was super, super complicated. But you did your best to do it, right? And B2B is more complicated. And but that point about, like, okay, knowing that nuance of like how that data get there. I think the other thing is, like, the data is always changing. Mm-hmm. So I was just doing, for my current job, a weekly reporting. Somebody had put something on a slide from a dashboard, and the way I had a question, I was like, this doesn't look quite right. Just like it doesn't make sense. Does it really mean this? And by the time I went back to the dashboard, pulled the same data, it had already changed. Right? Because that's just the nature of that data. I don't know. Mike Nambi, do you see that too? Like, where people look at reports and then they don't really understand, the kind of the sausage making that leads to the data that they're looking at?
Yeah, and I think that when people are asking for reports, I've always been of the mindset that they're not looking for the report, but they're looking for what you should do with the information in the report. So whenever I get data and report requests like that, I'll always include the report or a link to the report if it exists as an appendix. But to be honest, I usually just respond back with this is what you should do. And here's the information to back it up if you need it, because that's really what they're asking for. Right. They're not. Yeah.
And this is why we need Naomi on this episode. She nails it every time like that.
Oh, trying.
I definitely, that resonates for sure with me. I think I'm in an engagement right now where, there's this desire to sort of like sync data to the Salesforce campaign object, right? And so, bear with me. We'll get a little nerdy for a second, but like, we have disconnected. We're using HubSpot, so it's not following the Marketo campaign hierarchy stuff that is so ingrained for all you Marketo users out there. It's not going to mirror that at all. And I posted this question to our MoPro Slack channel the other day. I was like, I'm not losing my mind, right? Like the object has to exist in Salesforce in order to associate it to the campaign. And so if these records that you're campaigning against aren't ready for sales yet, and you don't have a tight operation around, who needs to be displayed to sales at what point, then associating them to the campaign is not going to work, right? Because we're just going to pump a bunch of records into the system, and then the sales reps are going to be like, wait, who should I be talking to? Who should I be following up with? Right? So there's this big problem there. So like the one request to just like say, hey, I want to see how many, I want to see records associated, I want to see campaign performance. I'm like, well, what about the campaign performance do you want to see? Because it's unlocking a bunch of other problems. If you want it that way, we're going to have to face a whole new slew of issues. And so really, what are you after, right? If you're just looking for like a high level, how many registrants are at the webinar, like we can do that in a totally different environment. It doesn't have to be in Salesforce. Right.
But if what you're looking for is an attribution model that accurately reports the dawn and birth of a record compared to when the opportunity record gets created, then the association of the campaign record in Salesforce can become critical, and then marketers will be so upset. And so if you design it just for the sales organization and we don't want to have them see records until it's time, and then the marketing organization is like, well, what about attribution?
Yep.
That's us. That's us. That's our world in a nutshell,
all
right there.
Long, right?
Okay, so Mike, I don't know. Maybe you had more to go, but like this is begging two, like to me, two big questions that where I would love to see this new technology help us is on the like analytics, reporting, insights side of things, right? So because I've always thought of that as the analogy I use is like it's playing defense in basketball, right? You can be an average defender, but if you work your ass off, right, like you put in effort, you can become pretty good. And it feels like getting reporting and getting the kind of insights that Naomi describes, right, takes a little bit of effort, and it's not just go pull a report, right? So if there's a way to try to make that faster, because the other thing I've seen is like somebody asks for a report, they get something, it begs another question, and so on, right? So it's a continuous cycle. That's one. The other, you were just describing, Mike, the scenario of HubSpot objects or Marketo objects, Salesforce objects, and like one of my assertions right now, it was where I think the technology could have the most impact, is that none of these, like Salesforce has, I know it's evolved and I'm not the expert on Salesforce. At the same time, right, how many times have we seen in the last week, month, 2 months, 6 months, conversations about, do we continue to use the lead object in Salesforce or not, right? Like it's a holdover from those early Benioff days, right? And so like I always like, and then all the big marketing automation platforms other than HubSpot, right, have been acquired. HubSpot's continuing to innovate, but I think there's a perception about their ability to scale, like all this stuff, right or wrong. So like my question is like, is this going to force them to change, or is there going to be new players that come into space that take over and do things in a very different way? Like that's what I'm really expecting to come out of this, or at least maybe on the data and analytics parts, hoping for something that can make that part faster and more effective.
Yeah.
Are we doing another podcast after this? Because you just opened a whole new door.
Yeah.
I've got time.
There's like we're going in, folks. Here we go. I'm funny enough, like this era that we're entering will either be the saving grace for Salesforce, and people are like, Salesforce isn't going anywhere. What the heck are you talking about, Mike? Well, there's some
sleepers.
There's some challenges, and like clearly HubSpot is doing something. They're moving up market. There's challenges that are happening right now, and it is a disconnected ecosystem. Like they're bolting on Frankenstacks left and right, and none of it really talks to each other. And so either this new era is going to be their saving grace because they can finally figure out how to interact with all of it because it doesn't need to now be rebuilt into its own tech stack, or the other players are going to move so much faster that it's just going to be like, sorry, that's too complicated for me now. So I want to go over here to these other environments that are easy to interact with because the technology is prepared for the ML AI era. These other tools potentially are more prepared to take it on faster. I don't know. It's either going to be a saving grace or a downfall, or maybe neither. But yeah, it's
So it's my hypothesis that
slightly optimistic.
there are so many things that we aren't necessarily looking at that are happening behind the scenes. And the example that comes to mind broadly in generative technology is the company that has seen the greatest increase in their value and the largest long-term impact on their business right now from OpenAI's work and all the other players is NVIDIA, the chip maker, because they're the systems doing the thinking. It's their chips that enable the technology. I think in our space, where we might not be talking right now, we want to talk about Salesforce, Adobe, HubSpot, Sixth Sense, Zoom Info. That's where we want to talk. But we're not talking about Snowflake. Like, we aren't talking about other places where the game could change.
Yeah.
Because all that we're talking about in terms of reporting and analytics and curating digital experience and managing emails that are sent, that's all the operational layer. The data is the foundation. So if we can take the telemetry from HubSpot, Marketo, Salesforce, push it all down into a repository like Snowflake or Synchrony or one of these players who's just getting data from everywhere, that layer of data becomes the source of truth. And then other systems can report across everything.
Yeah. For the listeners, I threw my finger into the air and I was like, yep, spot on. Like, this is, we're all watching each other on the video, but I fundamentally, like, there was a post on LinkedIn yesterday, I think. Dave Rigotti's got a great product he's working on, Inflection, hooks into
Dave's awesome.
warehouse, right? Like, he talked
Dave
about,
and Aaron.
Yeah, Dave and Aaron, yep. He talked about in his post, this notion of warehouse native applications, right? And and my response to that was, I think that the problem today is that there aren't enough experts in market to try to even understand the orchestration of a centralized repository and then doing warehouse native deployments from there.
Yes.
Right? There's just not enough of us that have the skill set yet. But like, and to Adam's point, who commented on it, like, Snowflake's cost to actually leverage accessing the data is exorbitantly high. For now, exactly. Yeah. And so as those costs to interact with the data come down and the skill level comes up to understand how that orchestration can happen, I think that will be a very interesting future for all of us.
Right. What happens when Snowflake says, I'm going to provide you with the next best opportunity set for you to go after?
Yeah.
Right. Well, like, to me, like, the idea that the data is actually where the value is not a new thing. Mm-hmm. But where I was going, right? I don't think the point applications are there yet. So this idea that there's going to be new players, like, who's going to be the red box that takes out Blockbuster, then Netflix takes them out, right? Like, it's like, there's going to be some of that's going to happen, unless, absolutely. And I don't know that the big players, I mean, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I don't see them doing the kinds of things in public, right? They're leading me to believe
it's not in public.
And in some degree, there's it's in their best interest not to have things change.
Right. But I can promise you, that their labs are actively doing bigger thinking than we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you said that NVIDIA thing about how it made me realize, a couple of years ago, my oldest built his own gaming computer, and like the most difficult thing to get was the video processing card, because they're getting used for other applications like day trading and cryptocurrency and stuff like that.
Right. Data. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, that was a really, like, interesting point. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure if we really wanted to, we could go for another 40 minutes, an hour.
At least another hour.
Right.
Absolutely.
But hey, you know what? Beautiful thing, listeners. Hey, hint, hint, shameless plug. Paul is going to be talking about some of this stuff at Mopsapalooza. So we can come hang out and talk for lots of time.
Absolutely.
In November. So yeah, let's keep that conversation going.
Yeah. Generative AI can't replicate that yet, can it? Right. That kind of experience.
Not that experience.
All right. Wow.
We're toying with the idea of doing it once every other year, by the way. So there's some exclusivity here.
Ooh.
Maybe we won't follow the same rigor of like, oh, we're going to do it like all the other SaaS companies and do it annually. It's like, well, maybe we'll create some exclusivity and create some breathing room for us all to go learn some stuff and come back together.
For us to all go implement machine learning across all of our stacks.
Right. We're going to do it this year, and then 2 years later, we're going to come back. This isn't a guarantee, but yeah, we're going to come back and be like, what'd you learn? And we'll see.
Sounds good. That'd be good. All right. Well, so before we go though, Paul, any things that we didn't cover that you were like, if people, leave this episode listening and say like, oh, they should have really this is one key point, what would that be?
I don't know, and I would love to hear about it. I think that this is absolutely has to be a community discussion. It is definitely something that across revenue, marketing, and customer success operations, we need to all collaborate on. Like, these changes are going to be foundational. Careers are going to change. Skill sets have to change. Our employers are going to change. Our internal customers are going to change. And we need to be there with them. And I think as a community, we got to stick together through it all.
Interesting. Okay. Paul, this has been very, very interesting. I've learned a bunch. I have now, of course, more questions. So more informed questions, maybe that's the way to think about it. Well, thanks. So if folks want to keep up with you and your thinking, or want to talk to you about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
I think LinkedIn's a great place to start. You can find me there, and that's a perfect place to start the thread.
All right, sounds good. Naomi, Mike, so good to have all of us here on one of these. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Glad to be here, definitely.
Yeah. All right, and to all of our listeners, and appreciate you sticking with us. We're trying to get back on that train of getting these out on a more regular basis. So stay with us. We'll get there. Until next time, though, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.